Welcome guys to my third Q&A theory video. For those of you who don't know, this is the series of videos where I take theory questions posed of me, as of right now just in the comments on my other Q&A videos and on my Tumblr page, that have been specifically requested to go into one of these videos, and I answer them in one of these videos face to face with the camera. It's still a relatively new series of videos, but I've really enjoyed doing it, though I'm worried that I'm not going to enjoy it quite so much today because it's like 100 friggin' degrees in this room. And I have turned off all but my ceiling fan, which is relatively quiet, to reduce the noise pollution in here so that you can actually hear what I'm saying. I'm actually recording this into two different sources here. Hopefully one of those will come out relatively okay with the fan going. Point is, it is very important to me that y'all know how much I love you. Anyway, I think I have 7 questions for you today. I've gone through these once and kind of put together my preliminary thoughts on them, but as per usual, for the most part, I am going to answer these questions as I read through them. First up, who do you think built the Crystal Gems temple? I'm tempted to say the humans, but there's so many parts of the temple that are gem technology that it would just seem weird. If gems made it, it would also be strange because of the door to the temple. The door only opens depending on the 5 gems on the door, who are seemingly only pearl, garnet, amethyst, and rose. Where would the other gems in the rebellion go? What do you think? I'm actually going to answer this one backwards. The fact that amethyst is included in the temple at all tells us that it was made after the rebellion was over. Not only is her gem included in the door, but she is one of the components in the temple fusion, which is what the statue in the front of the temple is of. So right away we know that whenever it was built, whoever built it, it was built after the war was over. They wouldn't have needed any rooms for anyone other than the current crystal gems and rose. As for who built it, just because of the vast amounts of gem technology that are found within it, I would have to say that it had to be them. I don't know specifically which of them had the capacity to build that stuff. It doesn't seem like any of the characters have the technical expertise to build something like the temple itself, but humans couldn't have built gem technology into a mountain either, so it had to be the gems. There's really no two ways about it. The only part of the temple which could have been contributed by humans is the statue. A lot of people are confused about this. They think that the statue is the temple. It's not. The temple is behind the statue. So it is conceivable that the temple was built there by the crystal gems, the surviving crystal gems, after the war was over and after they found amethyst at the kindergarten. And then later, humans, maybe even Captain Dewey and his crew, built the statue to honor the crystal gems and thank them for something that they did. Moving right along, do you think that there's any special meaning behind gem-to-gem contact? I don't think we've ever seen it in the series, and there's a shot in the answer during the Something Entirely New song where Ruby and Sapphire seem to almost touch gems, but hesitate and move their hands into a more standard dance pose. If you do think there's a meaning, what do you think it is? I've been wondering about this myself. There's a couple of different reasons why I think it might be taboo to touch gem to gem. First of all, the gem is basically the combination of the gem's brain and their true physical body, and while it's not, I wouldn't call it delicate, for example, it can be broken. We have seen that a gemstone can be broken. And I would imagine that even if a gem doesn't expect a situation to break their gemstone, they would still be aware of the possibility. So maybe because various gemstones do seem to be of similar hardness, they avoid touching gemstones on the off chance that some miracle happens and they end up shattering each other somehow. But I also think that in this particular situation, it might come down to the specific situation that Ruby and Sapphire found themselves in. They came together in a very specific kind of way, a way that was seen as taboo by their fellows. And they were in the process of experimenting with coming together in that way again. I think that them almost touching their gemstones together and then not was to symbolically convey that last little bit of hesitation they had before finally fusing for the second time. There could be more of a meaning to it than that, but I don't see what it would be, if there is one. Despite the naming scheme for a lot of their buildings, gems don't seem to have any sort of spiritualism, so it probably wouldn't be something like that. And we've heard enough about enough gem taboos at this point that I would have expected it to have come up if it were some societal taboo for them or something. Though I will admit this is something that I'm also very interested in, so I hope that they do follow up with this at some point in the future if there is more to it. How would you like Steven Universe to end? What do you think is going to happen to the characters after the series ends, after a time skip, for example? This is going to seem really cheesy and very unlikely, but I'd like to see the show end with a truce between the Crystal Gems and Homeworld. The current Crystal Gems are obviously not strong enough to fight a war with Homeworld. That's just not possible. Let's say some miracle occurred and the Ruby Squad and all of the Famethyst, Jasper, even Holly Blue Agate, all joined up with the Crystal Gems. They still wouldn't be strong enough to fight Homeworld. It's just not physically possible. Let's say they managed to cure all the corrupted gems. They still wouldn't be strong enough to fight Homeworld. It's not physically possible. So what I'd like to see happening, and this is also the only satisfying conclusion to the series that I can actually see them pulling off, is Steven and the other crystal gems, probably by example, not to turn over a new leaf and join the crystal gems, but to consider the possibility that maybe their way of life isn't the only valid one. To give Stevens and pearls and garnets and amethysts and peridots and even Lapis's way of life a little bit of respect and consideration, enough that they don't try to stomp out the crystal gems, enough that they stand back, let bygones be bygones, and even pursue the possibility that some of their citizens would be better off if they had the choice to leave homeworld society and go live that other life if they so choose. That maybe, just maybe, they should consider the possibility that choice is important for everybody. The only reason that Homeworld has a problem with resources and the like is because they insist on expanding as much as possible when they have no need to. Between my theory that Rose was actively seeking a way for gems to reproduce that wouldn't harm host planets, and the fact that gems don't need to be as conquest-driven as they're shown to be, I really do think that the show is going to resolve with Homeworld deciding to put their conquests on hold and look into the possibility of restructuring their government into something that's more fair to everybody. I could see, after a time skip, characters like Steven and the Crystal Gems being able to travel freely between Earth and Homeworld, and some Homeworld gems choosing to freely travel between Homeworld and Earth, even though they aren't really peaceful allies. It's more like there's a truce between them than they are actual allies, but the possibility of the two uniting into something healthy is there and does exist. What kind of personality do you think that the Peridot Steven and Lapis Steven fusions are going to have? That would be assuming that Peridot and Steven and Lapis and Steven are ever going to fuse. I think they probably will, but let's not pretend like we know for sure that they are. When trying to predict the personalities of fusions, it's always going to be difficult. Fusions are hard to pin down in general, but we have to look at the similarities between the characters, the similarities between their personalities, the things that they have in common in regards to their personalities, just like with Smokey. Amethyst and Steven are both very playful, but they're also both very self-conscious. So Smokey came out very playful, but also self-conscious, putting up a facade of strength and confidence that doesn't really reflect how they actually feel. But Steven and Amethyst are both very proactive people. So in a fight, Smokey is actually quite effective because they are able to react on instinct. Lapis is still such a mystery to me. I've decoded a lot about her character recently, especially in my recent analysis video. And the only person that she really seems to get along with 100% of the time is Steven. The only person she seems willing to confide in is Steven. But so much of her character is defined by her guilt and depression and the trauma that she faced in her past. I think that if she and Steven were to fuse, his past traumas that he's only now starting to acknowledge, would bubble to the surface, and their fusion would be, for the most part, at least at first, a complete mess. As for Peridot and Steven, I kind of see them being less eccentric than Peridot, but at the same time more precise and intellectual than Steven, something that is a genuine middle ground between their personality types, as they are pretty polar opposite. Steven being more about feelings and instincts, and Peridot being more about what she can quantify and what she can construct. But we've also seen that Peridot has grown emotionally a lot recently, so there is the possibility that in a Peridot-Steven fusion, Steven's emotional center would pull that emotional growth forward and bring the emotional side of Peridot out into the forefront, which I think could be great too. How do you think Peridot reconstructed the communications tower the first time in Cry for Help? She didn't have her escape pod at the time. She didn't have her escape pod, but she did have the ability to fly using one of her arms and the ability to float things using the other, so it was probably doing that. AJ, I think I figured out why humans can understand gems. Could it be that the gems introduced language in the SU version of Earth? There are flaws in the theory, but I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I would appreciate if this got into one of your Q&A videos. Thanks. Technically speaking, it is absolutely possible that gems introduced language to the humans in Steven's Earth, and that they aren't actually speaking English as we understand it, but some alternative universe version of English. But unfortunately, that would absolutely not explain why humans and gems are able to understand each other. Gems develop at a much slower rate than humans, and human language develops very, very quickly relative to the development of human society. So if gems did introduce language to the humans of Steven's Earth thousands of years ago, which, first of all, they didn't arrive early enough to introduce language, from what I remember of the history of language. I could be wrong about that, don't quote me on that. But they definitely could have influenced language a lot once they arrived. But even if they did, their language would have developed much more slowly and would be much closer to that language as it was when they introduced it to Earth. Whereas the languages on Earth currently would be vastly different and they still wouldn't be able to understand each other. So the reason that gems and humans are able to understand each other in SU is still up in the air. How do you see Jasper's redemption arc, if she gets one, playing out? How do you think Jasper will interact with the crystal gems and lapis? I've talked about this before. I actually think she'll get on quite well with the crystal gems once she actually learns to accept them, or at least give them a chance. Pearl is a servant, a slave, who taught herself how to fight. Pearl may not be the strongest of the crystal gems or the fastest of the crystal gems, but she is by far the most skilled. I think a warrior like Jasper could really come to appreciate someone like Pearl, and the two of them might find that they actually have a lot in common and a lot to talk about. Comparing battle tactics and fighting styles, and maybe even sparring with each other and teaching each other a thing or two, helping each other to improve beyond the level that they've already reached. Garnet and Jasper would be great sparring partners. Garnet doesn't really have anybody who she can test her limits against in a safe environment. If Jasper really did become redeemed and join the crystal gems all out, Jasper could be that sparring partner for Garnet, which would be awesome. I also think that if Jasper is able to get over the fact that Garnet is a fusion, she will find that she really appreciates Garnet's strength. She would be a fantastic mentor for Amethyst. I know she's put Amethyst through a lot lately, and she'd definitely have to make that up to Amethyst in a lot of ways. But Amethyst wants to get stronger. Yeah, her body is very different from Jasper's, despite being structured mostly the same. But Jasper has been stated to be the perfect quartz. She understands the quartz form better than probably any other quartz in existence. If there's anyone who can help teach Amethyst how to better utilize the form that she has been born with, it's Jasper. For Steven, I could see her being someone who Steven could talk about the war, someone who wouldn't lie to him and withhold things from him, who would be brutally honest with him about what the war was actually like, and even share stories about the negative aspects of Rose, the negative aspects that the other crystal gems pretend aren't there and refuse to talk about with him, despite the fact that no one, including Rose, is perfect. I could see the show going a humorous route between her and Peridot and having them pretty much constantly annoyed with each other, but also Jasper could learn a lot from Peridot about how to appreciate people that she normally wouldn't have appreciated. Lapis would be the hardest of the group. Jasper did a lot of horrible things to Lapis, just like Peridot did a lot of horrible things to Lapis. But the difference here is that Lapis likewise did a lot of horrible things to Jasper. They both have a lot to make up to each other for. And the last time we saw them together, Jasper seemed pretty obsessed with Lapis. That's something the two of them are going to have to talk out and really work out, and I have no idea how that's going to go, so I'm just going to move on. As for how I see the actual redemption going down, the actual start of Jasper's redemption, there was a moment in Earthlings where, right as Jasper was becoming corrupted, it's the moment when Jasper realizes that Steven has no idea who Pink Diamond is. That I think it finally sinks in for Jasper that Steven is not Rose. And I think just that alone, that realization alone, could be enough for Jasper to actually hear Steven out the next time they interact. So if I'm right and Steven is going to heal Jasper's corruption sometime relatively soon, I think that will be enough to act as the catalyst. That healing of her corruption and that realization together will be enough to act as a catalyst. And that is all the questions I have for today. I have finally set up a dedicated method for you guys to submit questions for these Q&As. I have decided to go the simple route and just set up a basic Gmail account. I went with ajqa@gmail.com, the exact spelling of which should be here-ish. Still make it clear whether or not you want me to show your name when I show the question. I'd also like to ask you guys in person, once again, to take a look at my Patreon page. I feel really uncomfortable talking about this, but I don't really have a choice at this point. I'm not being hit by the advertiser unfriendliness thing. My videos aren't being demonetized because they're advertiser unfriendly or anything like that. But this recent ad boycott on YouTube has caused a lot of the larger advertisers to back off, and so I'm making far less revenue than I was previously. It's not as bad as it could be for me, but it has certainly hit my income, and I am going to have to either put this channel on a back burner or discontinue it completely in favor of other career choices. And I definitely don't want to do that. What it boils down to, if any of you can help out the channel in any way, I'd greatly appreciate it. All of that said, rambling aside, guys, what did you think of any of the theories as they were presented in this video? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.